Las Vegas today is polished, expensive, and ruled by faceless corporations. But it wasn't always this way. Before the boardrooms and resort fees, the mob ran Vegas like their own empire, a city where gambling was suddenly legal, fortunes were built overnight, and fear created order nobody dared challenge. In 1931, a single law transformed the Nevada desert, attracting syndicate cash, ambitious dreamers like Bugsy Siegel, and a brand of ruthless efficiency that turned Vegas from dusty outpost to global legend. But was this criminal era truly the city's golden age? Or just the start of a much bigger gamble? That answer begins at the lost crossroads of law, desperation, and underworld ambition. In 1931, Nevada lawmakers made a desperate bet. With the mining industry collapsing and the Great Depression grinding the state to a halt, they took a gamble of their own, legalizing casino gambling and fast-track marriages. The idea was simple. If the state couldn't dig wealth from the ground, maybe it could draw it from the pockets of travelers, dreamers, and anyone hungry for a fresh start. That same year, construction on the Hoover Dam brought thousands of workers to the edge of the desert. They worked long, brutal hours, then poured into nearby towns at night, looking for a way to spend their paychecks. Saloons and makeshift clubs sprang up along Highway 91, with places like the Paradise Club offering blackjack, cheap whiskey, and a promise to look the other way. Nevada's new laws were almost an invitation, written in neon, for outsiders with money and vision. The rules were loose, the oversight nearly non-existent, and the potential for profit was enormous. Syndicates from Chicago, Cleveland, and New York saw the opportunity immediately. They sent scouts, then cash, then trusted men to set up shop. Meyer Lansky, already famous for his financial genius, began funneling money west. He wasn't interested in running slot machines himself. Instead, he built networks, backed frontmen, and made sure the right palms were greased so that business could run without interference. By the early 1940s, the Strip was taking shape, not as a playground for the rich, but as a place where anyone could walk in, place a bet, and feel like a high roller for a night. The money flowed in both directions. Tourists lost it at the tables, workers earned it building new clubs, and mob financiers took their cut off the top. The state's gamble paid off. In just a decade, Las Vegas transformed from a railroad stop to a city where fortunes changed hands every hour. The local authorities, happy to see tax revenues and jobs, mostly looked the other way. For the mob, it was the perfect environment. Legal on paper, but wide open for the kind of business that thrived on cash, secrecy, and a handshake deal. This was the economic vacuum the mob filled, not just with money, but with a code of conduct that valued loyalty, silence, and results. The groundwork was set for something bigger. The city was ready for the kind of vision and the kind of risk that only syndicate money could provide. In 1945, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel arrived in Las Vegas with a promise that sounded like fantasy: a palace in the desert where Hollywood stars would gamble under chandeliers and every guest would feel like royalty. Backed by Meyer Lansky and syndicate money from the East Coast, Siegel took over a half-built project called the Flamingo. He poured money into it, first $1 million, then $2 million, then $4 million. By the time the doors opened on Christmas night, 1946, the cost had ballooned to $6 million, a staggering sum for the time. But the dream was already cracking. Rain poured down, construction crews scrambled to finish rooms, and the high rollers Siegel counted on never showed up. For weeks, the Flamingo bled cash. Rumors spread that Siegel was skimming, or worse, lying to his backers. Syndicate bosses in New York and Chicago started asking questions. 6 months later, Siegel was shot dead in Beverly Hills. The official story was robbery. Everyone else knew it was mob justice. Overnight, Mo Sedway and Gus Greenbaum, trusted men from Lansky's circle, took control of the Flamingo. The chaos ended. Within months, the casino turned a profit. Payroll records from that summer show regular paychecks, strong union contracts, and a new discipline on the floor. Dealers and showgirls remembered Sedway by name, and for the first time, the Flamingo felt like a business, not a circus. The blueprint was set. Mob money built the dream. Local workers kept it running, and tourists lined up to spend. Skimming off the top became routine, but so did steady jobs and a sense of order. The Flamingo's rebound sent a signal up and down the strip. Vegas didn't just belong to the bold, it belonged to the connected. And as the profits rolled in, every new casino followed the same formula. Syndicate loans, local labor, and just enough glamour to make the world forget the blood on the marble floors. Discipline, in mob-run Las Vegas, wasn't written in employee handbooks or enforced by security cameras. It was understood, enforced by a presence that hung over every table and every back room. Dealers, pit bosses, bartenders, they all knew the rules, and they knew exactly who was watching. A retired pit boss once put it simply, they didn't need cameras because everyone knew who was watching. That invisible oversight shaped the rhythm of daily life on the casino floor. Cheaters and thieves didn't get second chances. Word spread quickly when someone tried to cross the line. Sometimes they were fired on the spot. Sometimes they just vanished from the scene. The threat of mob justice kept the peace in a way that police patrols and metal detectors never could. But order didn't just come from fear. It came from a strange kind of fairness. Casino workers, especially those with union cards, found a level of job security that was rare in the rest of the country. Paychecks arrived on time. Unions like Culinary 226 negotiated contracts that meant real health care, steady hours, and the chance to buy a house on a service wage. Even the cocktail waitresses and showgirls, who worked long shifts for tips, remembered that a pit boss or a manager would step in if a guest got out of line. For many, the mob felt less like a threat and more like insurance, tough, but protective if you played by the rules. This wasn't utopia. Getting on the wrong side of the wrong person could end a career overnight, and loyalty was often a one-way street. But for those who did their jobs and kept their mouths shut, the system worked. The city ran on a code. Respect the house, respect the workers, and keep the chaos outside. That code built a kind of trust, not just between bosses and employees, but between the city and the people who called it home. In a place built on risk, the mob delivered something that felt almost like safety. Frank Sinatra didn't just perform in Las Vegas, he helped define it. On any given night in the 1950s and 60s, you could find him on stage at the Sands, backed by Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., with a crowd that mixed movie stars, high rollers, and working-class tourists. The Rat Pack made the Strip the place to be, and the city responded by rolling out the red carpet for everyone, not just celebrities. If you wanted a ticket to the show, you didn't need to be rich or know someone. You just needed to walk in the door. Casino lobbies buzzed with energy. Bellhops greeted guests by name. Dealers swapped jokes with regulars, and a cocktail waitress might slip you an extra drink if she liked your style. The hospitality wasn't just for show. It was the city's calling card. Room rates stayed low, drinks flowed freely, and visitors were treated like royalty, whether they wore tuxedos or Hawaiian shirts. The idea was simple. Make everyone feel like a VIP, and they'd come back again and again. The money to build this fantasy didn't just appear out of thin air. Behind the scenes, the Teamsters Pension Fund poured millions into new resorts, fueling a construction boom that brought the Stardust, Riviera, and Dunes to life. The Tropicana opened in 1957, costing a staggering $15 million, an amount that set the standard for luxury at the time. These weren't just casinos. They were playgrounds for the American dream, built with union labor and finished on schedule. Workers earned solid wages, and the city's middle class grew alongside the neon skyline. For most visitors, the glamour felt real. You could see a headliner, eat a steak dinner, and play the slots without breaking the bank. If the boss liked you, your drinks and room might be comped. The magic of mob-era Vegas was that it made ordinary people feel extraordinary. It was a city that promised excitement, generosity, and a taste of the good life. No questions asked. Every casino on the Strip had a secret. The real money wasn't just made at the tables or the slot machines. It was lifted quietly, before it ever hit the books. This was the Skim, and it ran like clockwork. Technicians started early, recalibrating slot machines so the official numbers never matched the true take. A few percentage points here, a few there. Enough to make millions vanish each year without leaving a trace. At the Stardust, the heart of the operation, trusted count room staff pulled cash from the drop boxes before the day's count. The surplus never made it to the official ledgers. Instead, it was bundled in envelopes or stuffed into suitcases, then handed off to a courier who knew better than to ask questions. Argent Corporation, a shell company with clean paperwork, owned the casinos on paper. But the real bosses were hundreds of miles away, waiting for the next delivery. Couriers flew out of McCarran Airport with stacks of unreported cash, sometimes hidden in false-bottomed bags, bound for Chicago, Kansas City, or Cleveland. The money might pass through 3 or 4 hands before it reached its final destination. In some years, the FBI estimated that the skim from just one property, like the Stardust, could reach $15 million. None of it was taxed, none of it declared, and nobody in the state seemed eager to notice. The system depended on absolute trust. Count room supervisors, slot technicians, and cashiers all had to play their parts perfectly. If someone talked, or if a courier slipped up, the whole chain was at risk. But for decades, the operation ran almost without interruption. The city sparkled on the surface, but beneath the neon, the real business of Las Vegas moved in silence. Cash, favors, and a code of secrecy that law enforcement struggled to crack. The prosperity everyone saw was only half the story. Behind the curtain, the skim dictated who got rich, who stayed safe, and who disappeared when the numbers didn't add up. In November 1950, the Clark County Courthouse in Las Vegas filled with reporters, casino bosses, and federal agents. Senator Estes Kefauver's committee had arrived, and for the first time, the city's secrets were broadcast live to homes across America. Over 30 million people tuned in, watching casino owners and suspected mobsters squirm under sharp questioning. The hearings didn't just name names, they put faces to the rumors. Local officials were grilled about their ties to out-of-state money, and casino ledgers were picked apart on national television. The spectacle was impossible to ignore. For many Americans, this was their first real look at the underworld behind the neon. The committee's final report called out the city's weak regulations and warned that Las Vegas was wide open for racketeering. Recommendations for tighter licensing and federal oversight followed, and the hearings forced state officials to admit what most locals already knew. The mob wasn't just a rumor, it was the house. The era of quiet corruption was over. Now, the whole country was watching. Tony Spilotro arrived in Las Vegas with a reputation that preceded him. Sent by the Chicago outfit to keep their interests safe, he built his own crew and wasted no time making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The so-called hole-in-the-wall gang started breaking into jewelry stores and pawn shops, smashing through walls instead of picking locks. The violence wasn't limited to back alleys. Beatings, threats, and even murders crept closer to the Strip. Spilotro's methods were loud, messy, and impossible to ignore. Bodies turned up in the desert, and once quiet casino floors buzzed with rumors of who might be next. For decades, the mob's power had been invisible, enforced by whispers and a look from the right man at the right time. Now, with Spilotro in town, The old code was broken. The FBI planted wiretaps, newspapers splashed details of robberies and disappearances, and the city's sense of safety evaporated. By 1986, Spilotro and his brother were found buried in an Indiana cornfield, a final brutal message that the days of silent order were over. Howard Hughes arrived in Las Vegas in 1966 and started buying up the city's most famous casinos. He didn't just want a penthouse suite, he wanted the whole building. Within 2 years, Hughes controlled the Desert Inn, the Sands, the Frontier, and the Landmark, spending over $300 million. His deals were done behind closed doors, with lawyers and bankers instead of mobsters and pit bosses. For the first time, casino ownership started shifting from streetwise bosses to men in boardrooms. Regulators, eager for a more respectable image, welcomed Hughes and the corporate money that followed. By the late 1980s, the Strip was no longer a patchwork of local operators and syndicate fronts. Conglomerates like Mirage Resorts and Caesars took over, building mega resorts on a scale the mob could never match. The Mirage opened in 1989 with a $630 million price tag, followed by the Bellagio in 1998 at $1.6 billion. With corporate ownership came a new culture. Resort fees, paid parking, and digital loyalty programs replaced handshake deals and free perks. The city that once promised cheap thrills and personal service now measured value by quarterly reports. The mob's Vegas faded into memory, replaced by a logo and a bottom line. In 1950, Las Vegas had just 24,000 residents. By 1970, it was over 125,000, a surge fueled by casino jobs and mob-backed investment. The evidence is clear. Organized crime created a city where low-cost thrills, union wages, and strict order coexisted with skimming and hidden violence. FBI records confirm millions lost annually to the skim, while union archives detail steady pay and protection for workers. Yet, not all files from the era are public, and some decisions behind mob discipline remain undocumented. After Howard Hughes began buying casinos in the late 1960s, corporations replaced bosses, and by the 1990s, room rates and fees soared while local control faded. Today, Las Vegas is safer, richer, and more sanitized. But it has lost the personal touch that once defined it. The story of Mob Vegas is one of ambition and contradiction, where community thrived even as crime flourished. The legacy is complicated, but the facts remain. The mob built a city and corporations changed its soul.